Test, 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 test.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you take your seats, please? And I'd ask you to please stand and pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming out today or tonight. I would like to, if I may, ask our Dave Mejias, who's on my immediate left, to introduce the members of his delegation for the commission.
We have Andrina White. I'm sorry. I have to turn this thing on? Okay, sorry. Andrina Wyatt on the end, Jim Megan, Jerry Cashaw, Mike Pernick, and my name is Dave Mejias.
And if I call on my friend to the right, Peter B., if he could introduce the members of the Republican condition.
Certainly. To my immediate right is Maureen Fitzgerald, and to her right is John Reinhardt. To his right is Reverend Eric Millett, and then at the end of the line is Chris Devane.
If anybody has come in and they wish to speak, would you please come forward to Crystal? Crystal? Yes. Please give your name and address, and she'll give you everything you need to do if you want to be put on the talk list, okay? Without objection, I'm going to open this up by first giving a little background on why we're here and what we're doing here. And if I may take some time, excuse me a second. It may take some time just to read into the record some thoughts that I had put down this morning. This is the third time the Temporary Redistricting Advisory Commission has been assembled to fulfill its obligation under the Nassau County Charter. As stated in the 1995 final report on the Commission on Government Revision, the function of the Commission is to recommend one or more plans to the county legislature for dividing the county into legislative districts, close quote. The Commission consists of 11 members, with a non-voting chair being appointed by the county executive. There are 5 members appointed by the presiding officer. Those sit on my right, your left, and 5 by the minority leader, which is on my left, your right. The Commission permits but does not require public hearings. Is Kevin here? Okay. I'll try to speak louder into the microphone. The prior reapportionment processes established a tradition of permissive meetings seeking public input to be held around the county. The county legislature allocated $985,000 to fund the work of the commission. The allocation is divided equally between the commissioners appointed by the presiding officer and the commissioners appointed by the minority leader. However, a portion of the $985,000 is set aside to pay for stenographic services, American Sign Language interpreters, and other shared costs of the commission to each delegation as those expenses arise. Each delegation of appointees divides the balance of the purchase to the purchase needed for mapping technology, software, and the hiring of experts, counsel, and staff as each deem necessary. The development of a map or maps by the Commission must comply with both federal and state law. The proceedings have to be fair and transparent to the public. That transparency is achieved by significant outreach to the public and holding public hearings on any maps or plans for redistricting submitted by the commissioners or others to the county legislature. Once the plans or maps are drawn, they will be turned over to the legislature. Likewise, all transcripts, public comment that are generated at these hearings by the commission will be submitted to the full legislature for consideration. And that, by the way, includes the streaming comments and all of the other items that we are taking under our charge. The full legislature will conduct hearings on submissions by the appropriate committee and then by the entire legislature. The county legislature may reject, adopt, revise, or amend the redistricting plan or plans recommended by the Temporary District Advisory Commission, or adopt any other redistricting plan that meets all constitutional and statutory requirements. In an effort to achieve transparency, all the meetings and hearings will be public and streamed over our internet. It's streamed over the internet. The legislative clerk will preserve those records. Further, this commission will stream the hearings and keep the record open for a period of time to be determined after the last hearing for purposes of submitting emails or regular mails or correspondence with respect to items before the county. Any correspondence, email, or information received after that date will be forwarded directly to the full legislature for its consideration. In preparation for this hearing, notice of this meeting and others were sent to the following: the Office of the County Executive, Counsel to the Minority Commissioner Dave Mejidas, members of the Majority Commission delegation, Nassau County League of Women Voters, the City of Glen Cove, the City of Long Beach, the Town of Hempstead, the Town of North Hempstead, the Town of Oyster Bay, 22 villages in the Town of Hempstead, 30 villages in the Town of North Hempstead, 16 villages in the Town of Oyster Bay, 55 libraries, 57 school districts, 67 civic associations, 50 chambers of commerce, and 150 news and media outlets who service Nassau County. Please note that the commissioners appointed by the minority have asked for the adoption of a series of resolutions. These will be considered after all the people who have requested time to speak have spoken. The public may also resend in written requests or questions to the attention of the Nassau County Legislature at 1550 Franklin Avenue, Mineola, New York, 15501, or email to the Commission at legpubliccomment@nassaucountiny.gov, and that is posted on the county website. All these communications will be sent to each and every member of the Commission. With that said, let me call the first speaker to the microphone.
Well, just point of order, we don't have an agenda.
It was sent to you yesterday.
I know, but pursuant to Robert's Rules of Order, it has to be voted on by a majority of
Okay.
the commission in order to have a valid agenda. That's number one. Number two, you referenced a public notice that went out, and we submitted a public notice to the clerk's office as well, and I would like to know if that was clocked in and entered into the clerk's office and disseminated and distributed to all the governmental and community groups that you've listed for your public notice. So, all right, I'll speak a little louder. And I've never heard someone ask me to speak louder, but I'm glad to. They're usually telling me to quiet down. Well, there was a point of order as to whether or not we actually have an agenda. An agenda was not voted on by the majority of the commission, number one. Number two, there was reference made to a public notice that went out and was disseminated to various government entities in Nassau County as well as community groups. The Democratic commissioners submitted a public notice to the clerk's office for dissemination to those same groups, which the clerk's office would not accept nor stamp at that time. And I would like to know if it was accepted and stamped, and I would like to know if that particular public notice was given out to the public. I can't imagine that it was. As we sit here today, I just want to make the record clear that the Democratic commissioners were not consulted as to the dates of as to the date of this particular meeting or any of the other meetings that were in the public notice disseminated by the clerk's office. There are other meetings that we would like to have as well. This is this is a very important process. There have been many changes in redistricting law since our last redistricting in 2012. There's a New York Voting Rights Act, and there's a new partisan gerrymandering prohibition. There was the case, the Harkenrider case, which changed the landscape of redistricting in New York State completely. But it is important to have a robust public hearing process. 10 years ago, we started our redistricting process in May, on May 31st. We are now in the last day of August, 3 months later. However, the election cycle has been compressed. 10 years ago, petitioning started in June. Currently, it starts in February. And other counties across the state, with the same election schedule, have begun the process and even concluded their process. Many counties of state have already concluded their process already. We've been asking for a preliminary organizational meeting since June, and we've been stonewalled. There's been the Republicans and the chairman have provided zero explanation for this delay. I'm concerned that Chairman Maroney's delay represents an intentional strategy to exploit legal doctrine so that the county has free rein and the Republicans in the county have free rein to adopt an unlawful map for the 2023 election at a time when it's too late for anyone to effectively challenge the map under federal law. The Democrats in the county legislature have tried to prevent this delay by introducing legislation to speed up the deadline for adopting maps, but no action has yet been taken by the Republican majority. In terms of the hearings themselves and coming up with the dates for these hearings, 10 years ago when I served on this commission, the Republican and Democratic executive directors worked together to come up with a hearing schedule. If the redistricting process is not democratic, then the government it creates cannot itself be democratic. And the redistricting process cannot be democratic unless the voices of all the people are heard. Our commission chair has unilaterally tried to dictate a public hearing schedule which excludes great swaths of Nassau County from effective participation in the redistricting process. It's not only wrong, it is illegal. Furthermore, the chair lacks the legal authority to unilaterally dictate such an undemocratic hearing schedule. A hearing schedule must be adopted by a majority of the commission, 6 votes out of 10. There are 5 Democratic votes, 5 Republican votes, and the chair, who was appointed by the county executive, does not have a vote. The whole purpose of this requirement is that so both sides have input into the process. This hearing today was not scheduled, not voted upon, and not necessarily legitimate. But we're here anyway because we need to be heard and we need this process to be started. The hearings proposed by the Republican delegation are not enough for Nassau County. Nassau County is extremely racially diverse. According to the U.S. Census, in the last 10 years, we've seen every minority community with an increase of over 30% in our Latino community and an increase of over 60% in our Asian community. The only reason to limit the number of hearings is to keep the people in the dark and to prevent them from being heard. For example, the Republicans' proposal for hearings requires 1 hearing in Glen Cove, which has 27,000 residents, and 1 hearing in Hempstead, which has 768,000 residents. Literally 28 times the population of Glen Cove. The idea that they each deserve the same number of hearings is absurd. The town of Hempstead needs more hearings. Furthermore, if you look at where the hearings are and how long it would take there to get there through public transportation, a hearing at Hempstead Town Hall would take an hour and a half by public transportation from Inwood to get to. And we see this all over the county. The hearing proposed in the town of North Hempstead would take over an hour and 15 minutes to get to by public transportation from Newcastle or Westbury. The hearing in the town of Oyster Bay in North Massapequa would take over an hour and 15 minutes to get to from Oyster Bay Hamlet by public transportation. What's even more disturbing is that the hearing on the maps themselves that are proposed by both delegations are to be made public by 5 p.m. on November 10th and then sent to the legislature 3.5 hours later. The hearing on those maps is the very same day. So the public has 1 hour between 5 and 6 p.m. to review the maps that may rule its government for the next 10 years. This prevents public input. It takes days, if not weeks, to analyze or understand a proposed map. And what is the point of a hearing on November 10th if the public hasn't had the chance to even see the maps or analyze them? This is inconsistent with how every other commission operates. Suffolk County's had its maps out already for weeks. There are counties upstate that have completed the process. The process of setting the schedule has been entirely partisan and one-sided, and we, the Democratic commissioners, have had zero input into this schedule. So we're asking for a good faith schedule on hearings that gives all communities the opportunity to participate. Right now, there is no schedule of hearings because the commission has been prevented from adopting one. While the public notice purports to claim certain public hearing dates, you can't do that unless we vote on them. And there's been no vote and no request from the Democratic side on hearing dates and locations. We have some specific conflicts with some of the dates, particularly September 14th proposed by the Republicans and October 3rd, which is on the eve of Yom Kippur, where some people are traveling. This needs to be a more fair process. The law has changed. There's a New York Voting Rights Act now. There's legislation and case law and federal law that applies to this case and to this hearing. So I'm going to ask that the public address whether or not you want to have input in hearings in your local communities addressing these maps and how they affect your representation in government. We're going to pass out a preview of the resolutions that we've submitted to be heard, and I would invite people to discuss some of the issues before the legislature right now and how it is that we're going to have a fair process and what it is that you'd like to see us do to make sure that your input is taken into account. We want open, transparent, and a collaborative redistricting process. We need fair and legal maps drawn based on the current New York State law. We want to hear your concerns regarding the current legislative maps and what you would like to see the new maps take into consideration. Perhaps the unmet needs of your community is something that you want us to hear about, and any ways you believe your community is underserved or disenfranchised, or any resources you believe are unfairly allocated within a particular community because of your representation in government. We also want to hear any ways that you are satisfied with your current representation in government and what we'd like to see changed in the new maps. So in closing, we do want to be collaborative. We want to work with the Republican commissioners. We want to make sure that the public is heard and has the input that they deserve into a democratic process, which should be democratic and not a process that is foisted upon us illegally without a majority vote of the commission. And it's up to the people in this room to let us know how you feel and what you'd like to see done to make sure that that happens. Thank you.
Peter B.
Mr. Chairman, candidly, I'm somewhat disappointed by Mr. Mejia's beginning the proceedings with a partisan attack on the good faith and motivations and integrity of the Republican members of this commission. What has happened here is really very simple and very straightforward. There's no question that Mr. Maroney has been designated the chairman of the commission. He has set forward a set of dates and locations and times for which the public can be heard, and that is the purpose of this commission, to hear from the public, not to engage in partisan attacks on each other's motivations. So from my standpoint, I appreciate your efforts in having located locations where this commission can convene and hear from the public. So rather than attack each other's motivations, let us do what this commission is charged by law to do, which is to hear from the public. And may I suggest that the next thing that happen is that we start hearing from the public.
Well, I'm asking that the commission perform its duties according to the law, which means that we all have input. So if we want to have a democratic process that takes into account not only the public's input, you should take in the commissioner's input as well. So when we ask for months to have a hearing, to discuss when we can schedule hearings, to have a meeting about having a meeting, and we hear nothing other than scheduling hearings without a majority vote of the commission and public hearing dates, that is not legal. That is not the law. It's just, I mean, it's not fair to begin with. It's dirty pool. But you're telling us in advance something that you have passed by fiat. We're just asking that the rules be followed. That's it. This is not a partisan attack. This is merely a request that we follow the rules, that we be included, that we maximize the potential for public input, which means that we have an equal vote also and that we're heard as well, not just on scheduling, but also what the agenda is going to be on. This does not have to be partisan. All you have to do is pick up the phone and say, let's sit down and figure out a schedule. That's all that we're asking for. We want to be collaborative. We want to work together. We've suggested hearing dates. If they don't work for you, or if you don't like those hearing dates and you have something going on, we can't schedule that day, we're glad to look at other dates. But to just call it a partisan attack is very disingenuous and hyperbolic, because the reality is we're just asking for the process to be fair and the rules to be followed.
If I may, can you hear me back there? Can you hear me? I'm just talking to this gentleman. Okay. I have in front of me, and you will have it later this evening if you're here, the list of communities across Nassau County with no vetting of the location, no determination as to whether or not there is a facility that could handle it, but mere suggestions that something happened in some 8 or 9 different communities. And this came in some time ago. So there's been no effort to set a schedule, no effort to take your staff and have them actually figure out a location. We undertook that to have that location, these locations, knowing that they have the necessary availability, the necessary accessibility, that they are in each of the 3 towns, in both of the 2 cities, and likewise that the time that once the hearings are completed and the information turned over to the county legislature, that the county legislature then starts additional hearings on the maps. So there's plenty of opportunity to deal with both the public input and the maps themselves, number one. And number two, there is traditionally been the prerogative of the chair to set up these meetings, and we've done it all along. In fact, I'll point out what happened as an example of a better way of putting it. 10 years ago, when Mr. Mejias was on the commission at that particular time, a request was put in, I believe, from Legislator Carrier, who's a judge. I never could. Solide, thank you. It may have been somebody else, but they asked for one in the Elmont Library, and they went out. They took it seriously. They vetted it. They set up the whole thing, and we turned out and we had a meeting there, giving us places from around the county, and essentially saying, you go find them and you put them in these places, is not cooperative, Dave. That's dictatorial, and we'll not stand for that. Now, I'd like to move along and start hearing from the people instead of from us.
Well, I just want to say I completely agree with you, Mr. Maroney. Okay. What we did was make suggestions. Okay, see, suggestions. Had someone from your side gotten on the phone with us, we would have said, if these dates are okay with you, let's get a location. This is not dictatorial. This is being collaborative and saying we'd like more hearings and more locations that are easier for the public to get to. We suggested dates, and we never heard from you. All we heard is that you had already scheduled hearings illegally without a vote of the commission. So I completely agree with you. We made suggestions. You never responded to them. You never picked up the phone. You never called us back. You never made suggestions to us. You just foisted on us with a public notice hearings that were never approved by the commission. So I'm again going to suggest that we have more hearings at different locations. The dates and times could be, we could work that out. But more importantly, the one thing we should agree on is before these maps go to the legislature on November 10th, the public should be given more than an hour to review them. We're asking for October 14th or 15th, depending on your holiday schedule, so that the public has almost a month to review them before they go to the legislature. That's the least that we can do. So we're just making suggestions.
Before I call the first speaker, I just want to point out that my phone rings too.
I know, I
Timothy,
called you.
once.
A number of
About
times.
5 days ago. Now, Timothy Rogers, please you come up and let us know what your feelings are on this situation.
Good evening to the Honorable Committee, gentlemen and gentlewomen who committed to serve the residents of Nassau County in its redistricting effort that will live with us for at least the next 10 years. And I just would like to do my mother honor by acknowledging the people to my back. Thank you all for coming, and I apologize for giving you my back to talk to, but I'm hoping that you can hear me. I am a Democratic 30-year village resident that's also representing the New Hempstead Democratic Club. Do I stop this clock now?
No. Yes, your clock will stop. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we have a 3-minute rule here. Please continue.
I'm appealing to this committee to be fair and equitable to those Nassau County citizens who historically have been disenfranchised of the services and resources. Consequently, the infrastructure and communities of brown, black, seniors, veterans, and disabled folks who are on fixed incomes are deteriorating. The residents of Hempstead, Uniondale, Roosevelt, Freeport, and Lakeview are being taxed at the same rate as their other Nassau neighbors, but because of past practices of packing and cracking, these communities continue to decay. And I would like to also say, and I don't see a clock running, so I still think I'm having 3 minutes left. And so I would like to also say that if we get in our cars and drive from right here on Franklin and Old Country Road down Franklin to the end of Franklin where Malloy College begins and Hempstead Avenue B begins. If we did that blindfolded, once we get to the village of Hempstead, you would say, I'm in Hempstead. You would know. And once you drive out of Hempstead, you would say with the blindfold on, I'm in Rockville Center, because you can tell by just the feel of the car that you're in and the bumps and the infrastructure that's decayed in our black and brown communities. Based on our last census, I'm concerned about the imbalance of this committee. Our census showed that over 50% of the adults are females. I see 2 females represented on this committee. Our last census tells us that almost 20% of the residents are Latino/Hispanic. I see 1 represented here. Our last census says that almost 20% or approaching 18% of its residents are black and brown. I see 2 represented here. So how am I supposed to feel confident that you have my best interests at heart? I charge each and every one of you to move from the notion that perception is reality. Perception is not always reality. We know that. But perception is reality when it proves that it's going to happen time and time again. When perception is in fact reality and the inequitable distributions of resources is continued, then perception is reality. So can we move from that to trust and transparency? Can we move from perception to reality to fair and equitable distribution of resources? Can we move from perception is reality to equal representation vis-a-vis equal taxation? Can we move from perception is reality to truth, justice, and the American way? Let's do the right thing. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, I have a quick question for you. If you can come back up. I have a quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Michael Pernick. I'm one of the commissioners. And first, I want to thank you for coming out today, and I want to thank you for your powerful testimony. It spoke to me, and I appreciate the time and the thought and your involvement in this process. I thought it was very important.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you.
A question for you. So you said, and you testified today, a really moving picture of driving from here down to Rockville Center, and when you're blindfolded, you know when you're in Hempstead, you know when you're in communities of color. Can you tell us, for the benefit of all of the commissioners, how you think that issue, that disgraceful issue, might be addressed if we have a fairer district map?
If we had a fair district, and that's really, thank you, Michael, for just asking me that question, and that's almost a no-brainer. But if we had a fair and district map, then that means that our communities of people of color will not be dispersed among other communities, and therefore that vote has been co-opted and not represented.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Really appreciate your testimony.
You're welcome.
Karen Moskowitz, representing the League of Women Voters in Nassau County. Karen, good evening.
My name is Karen Moskowitz, and I serve as co-chair of the Redistricting Committee of the League of Women Voters of Nassau County. It's a pleasure to speak with you tonight and to work together for the best interests of Nassau County residents. The League is a nonpartisan, grassroots nonprofit dedicated to empowering everyone to fully participate in our democracy. While the League takes positions on a variety of public policy issues, it never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. As the redistricting process for Nassau County legislative districts begin, the League is here to advocate on behalf of a fair and transparent process. As we've all seen the problems encountered by the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission, it would be best practice and the best use of taxpayer money if there were one set of staff that worked with all commissioners as opposed to separate Republican and Democratic sets of staff, council, and mappers. At the onset of the redistricting process, we note the special protections afforded to racial and language minority groups under the U.S. and New York State constitutions, the Voting Rights Act, and New York statutes. We expect the new legislative districts to fairly and equitably represent Nassau's communities of color, which now comprise 44% of county residents. The new legislative districts should fairly reflect the voting strength of these communities and ensure their ability to elect candidates of their choice. We also note the new redistricting requirements imposed under New York's recently amended Municipal Home Rule Law and the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act of New York. The amended Home Rule Law requires that districts shall not be drawn to discourage competition or for the purpose of favoring or disfavoring incumbents or other particular candidates or political parties. We need a fair, equitable, and nonpartisan redistricting process in Nassau County. With respect to process, it's essential that county residents be able to freely observe the work of the Commission and actively participate in their process. Redistricting is foundational to the right to vote, and as such, the public must have confidence in the fairness of the process. The Commission's website must be updated and reflect dates and venues for the public hearings just announced, which, by the way, we only saw in Garden City Patch. No offense to Patch, but Patch. It should include meeting agendas and minutes, press releases, a contact list of staff and consultants, a timetable and maps, as well as serve as a portal for public comment. All of the above should be posted to the site as soon as possible. The public should also be informed of the dates of the Commission's working meetings, which should be open to the public and posted on the website at least 1 week in advance. All public, working, and mapping meetings must be publicized immediately via all forms of local media, particularly given the short lead time for the bulk of public meetings. And all meetings should be live streamed on the legislature's link. Additional public meetings must occur after the Districting Commission has proposed new legislative districts, but before the legislature has voted on the adoption of such maps. Almost done. Finally, know that the Nassau League of Women Voters is part of a coalition of community organizations. You may hear from one or more of them tonight, as well as at future public meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Again, for the record, we have if there's anybody here who is non-English speaking, we have a language line, a representative sitting in this side of the building, which will have an interpreter for you so that you may participate in this proceeding.
Would you like me to say that in Spanish?
Absolutely.
Hermano, si que alguien necesita ayuda hablando de inglés a español o que alguien le traduzca por ustedes, puede, en este lado va a estar alguien ahí para ayudarles. ¿Ok? Gracias.
Gracias, señor.
Did the stenographer get that?
He speaks 7 languages. Dan Oppenheimer, representing the Guidelines for Population Apportionment. Okay.
Good evening to members of the public. I'll try to speak up, and good evening to all the commissioners. I realize this is not a question and answer session, but a public comment, but the comments that I'm making, I hope, can be addressed in my contact information that I provided when I filled out the form. There are 19 legislative districts in Nassau County, and I'd like to know what the legal allowable population variation among the districts is. I know state by state it varies. It may vary county by county. In New York State, I am not sure. They're supposed to be relatively close to the same. If you had a district that had 85,000 people in it and another that had 45, obviously that would be inherently discriminatory or improperly drawn boundaries. So my information I would like would be the legal allowable population variation, and if the county is currently following those guidelines and if they will continue to follow those guidelines in the new proposed districts. The chairman mentioned that constitutional guidelines are followed. My understanding is that there are many guidelines with some wiggle room as you're doing this process. They refer to continuous and contiguous communities. I'd like to just give you a little graphic demonstration of what my district looks like. This looks like, okay, So that looks like something out of a computer animation. This is not a compact, contiguous district. I'd also like to see
Mr. Oppenheimer, just for the record, what district is that you're showing us?
District 14, Laura Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Oppenheimer.
And that's a little piece of Hempstead is carved out of that. I'm a proud resident of the village of Hempstead. And this has been taken into a district that includes Garden City, Mineola, Carl Place, Bethpage, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to know a public database of the population of each district for transparency purposes. The map makers that you have hired to do the districting have all of this information. The public needs to have this information as well. And I'd like to finally know how will the proposed new districts impact the population distribution. There's about 1.4 million at least population in Nassau County right now. It's never going to be an exact distribution in each district, but I certainly would like to see the data as to how you apportion them. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Oppenheimer. Just to answer your question, is deviation between districts is 5%. They have to be at least within 5% of each other, the most populated and the least populated. That's under the new statute that exists in New York State.
And is that currently being followed?
If it isn't followed right now, this process will correct it so that it does fall within that 5% deviation.
And we'll be able to verify that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Oppenheimer,
Yes.
Thank you for your testimony today. You raised some important points about public transparency, posting information on the website. I'll note that we have introduced a resolution that does exactly what you have called for, requiring posting of all of the demographic data, requiring posting of all of the current maps, the statutes and applicable laws and regulations. We just spoke about one, the Municipal Home Rule Law. There's also the New York Voting Rights Act, which was just enacted. There's federal law, the Equal Protection Clause, the Federal Voting Rights Act. There are significant requirements under the Municipal Home Rule Law, including a prohibition on drawing maps for partisan advantage. Now, I've had in my career an opportunity to be witness and involved in this process across the country. And it is basic practice at the outset of the redistricting process to make this information public and easily accessible so members of the community such as yourself can engage and understand what the process looks like. And I hope that we can do that as a commission. We'll certainly ask the commission to approve the resolution that does exactly what you're asking for. So thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oppenheimer. Karen Montalbano from the Baldwin Civic Association. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you. I just want to reinforce the idea of need for transparency. The notice of meetings went out so late. If I didn't have somebody actually tapping me on the shoulder and saying, hey, there's a meeting tonight, I wouldn't be here. I also do not appreciate seeing already the politics that is being bandied around. This is something that you should be doing for the people you represent, not for the parties you represent. So we need fair representation. Baldwin is an interesting community. We are a diverse community. We right now are with Freeport, which is a good thing because they're also a diverse community, and they understand, and we've had very good representation for the most part. But we also need to remain with other issues that are with us, and that is we're along the South Shore. We have waterfront. We have the Long Island Railroad. We have Sunrise Highway. These are issues that need to be considered when you're drawing these maps as to when something is within the communities that they can be dealing with very similar issues, okay? The only change that I would like to see, Baldwin has always been divided with a little piece off up here and a little piece down there and a major piece over here. I would love to see Baldwin have one representative so that we know where we're going We don't have to know that, oh, if you're on this side of Grand Avenue, you go to this one, and if you're on this side of Grand Avenue, you go to the other one. I never liked watching my neighbor have to go to a different polling place to vote for somebody different. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Karen Montalbano, Baldwin.
The next speaker is Pearl Jacobs of Uniondale, representing the Nostrand Gardens Civic Association.
Yes, good evening. I would like to speak regarding the unmet needs of our community in Uniondale. Uniondale is a community that suffers from marginalization, disenfranchisement, disinvestment, and disrespect. Even the identity of our community is being threatened. We have to fight for every little thing that is essential to a community's well-being, from getting our streets swept to infrastructure improvements. While communities in other preferential zip codes, things just get done. Just take a drive through different communities in Nassau County. The contrast is glaring. The section of State Road 102, AKA Front Street in Uniondale, is a roadway that would rival any third world roadway for worst in class. Empty lots permeate our landscape. Stores and businesses' facades are in extremely poor condition. And Uniondale stores and strip malls were designed without a designated area for garbage disposal, leaving our main streets with a sea of black contractor bags lining our streets on sanitation pickup days, which is every day pretty much in Uniondale. During the pandemic, Uniondale was one of the hardest hit communities in Nassau County, but still Uniondale remains a medical desert. Our neighboring community of East Meadow, which is also a hamlet, has 6 urgent care centers, one of which is directly across the street from the Nassau University Medical Center. Given the tax revenue that Uniondale generates as a result of its vast corporate neighbors, Uniondale should look magnificent. But let's not forget that Uniondale is a donor community. A donor community. As I stated before, our community identity is being threatened. Our collective civic associations, including our fire department, has been fighting for several years the unscrupulous renaming of parts of Uniondale to East Garden City. And the U.S. Census has officially removed it as a census-designated spot, yet the struggle goes on. And why is that? Because the northern community area hosts primarily commercial, intellectual, and cultural assets of Uniondale and Nassau County. It is my opinion that there is a concerted effort to strip these assets from a majority-minority community. The residential area of Uniondale will continue to languish until there is an outcry among our elected representatives demanding that these wrongs be made right. As a civic leader in Uniondale, I request that redistricting pertaining to the community of Uniondale be implemented with the intention of keeping Uniondale whole, as per the U.S. Census designated maps now indicate, and the exclusion of redlining and gerrymandering tactics.
Thank you. Laura Millay, the South Hempstead Civic Association. Laura, good evening.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here representing South Hempstead, which is a very small community. We're approximately 5 blocks by 10 blocks. 20 years ago, when the lines were redistricted, we were split completely down the middle. We are currently in Legislative District 5, but back then we were split between 2 and 5. 10 years ago, that was corrected, and we were made whole again. We would like to stay in District 5, stay complete. We're a small community, and we're continually divided. We have 4 school districts, 2 water districts, and when you do that to a small community, you lower our voice. So we would respectfully request that you keep that in mind, you keep South Hempstead together. And I'd also like to point out that I am joined by other members of my community, but representatives from the fire district wanted to attend, but because of the short notice, they were not able to be here. So I request in the future, for the future hearings, you get those notices out a little quicker. Thank you.
For the record, we are in the process of and have in fact updated the website. So you should take a look at the county website. Everything will be on that, and if it isn't already, thank you.
And will it be shareable?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Henry Boytel.
Henry Boytel from Rockville Center, New York. I attended every meeting of the commission 10 years ago. And those meetings, every one of them, was similar to the meeting we're having now. And it occurs to me that, for the most part, that was a waste of time. Why a waste of time? The people should not just have to be called upon to talk in the abstract about this community, that community, or general principles. There ought to be things on the table. So I suggest to you that tonight might be called a pre-organization meeting. But the next time, have an organization meeting at which you discuss amongst yourselves and debate what the principles are of organization, how you're going to function. Then another meeting about the principles that are to be applied to the redistricting decision. And your aim should be to come up with plans, not like last time. Last time, after months of nonsense, as far as I'm concerned, the commission at the last minute, each side came up, literally the last minute, I fault the Democrats and the Republicans on this, came up with plans which really the public had no real opportunity to talk about. And of course, one plan won out, and one plan went to the legislature, and a plan was eventually adopted there by the majority. There was no semblance at all of what open meetings are supposed to really be about. There was no semblance at all of the concept of fairness, which I understand is at least one of the principles that ought to be applied in the decision making that you have to do. So my suggestion is that you people who are all, as I understand it, subject to the open meetings law, should in open meetings, one after the other, convenient for the people if possible, but at least open meetings, discuss these things openly and then give the people an opportunity to comment upon what you have discussed. Otherwise, it's all a sham. Thank you.
Mr. Boytel.
Thank you, Mr. Boytel.
Mr. Boytel, thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate you coming out and taking the time. I want to let you know that we have introduced, we being the Democratic commissioners, have introduced a resolution, our resolution number 1, that does precisely what you're calling for. We are proposing that we have 7 hearings across the county after draft maps are introduced. That way there's an opportunity, as Mr. Mejia said, an opportunity for members of the public to look at those maps, give comment on those maps. There's an opportunity for the members of this commission to try to find a compromise that can earn the support and the consensus of all of us. That's what we want to do, and that's what we're trying to achieve, and that's why we've proposed a schedule, exactly as you've said, that gives that opportunity for real public comment on actual draft maps and an opportunity for the members of the commission to work together to achieve a bipartisan or nonpartisan consensus. Thank you again.
I have one last comment. If the acoustics, if the sound system is the same in the future as it is tonight, that's not an open meeting, okay? Most of what the chairman had to say tonight, where we sat, sounded like mumble. That's what I got out of it, mumble. And I'm sure there's a technician around who can turn up a dial and give us some volume back here. If there's not, you better have one next time.
Has that been fixed yet? Can people in the back hear us? I'm hearing people say no, it has not been fixed yet. I'm hearing somebody say it's like we're underwater, it's not clear. The acoustics aren't clear. Thank you.
Caprice, I can't read the middle name, but it rhymes is the last name?
It's Her Majesty Rhymes.
Her Majesty. Madam Majesty,
Yes,
welcome.
sir. Yes, that's right. You got it right. Well, I'm going to say two things my mother always taught me. Believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. And excuses are skin of a reason, stuff with a lie. We are the oldest county in the nation. So we should set the example that we are in the 21st century. And we should not be continuing with this antiquated process. We should be setting the example. This time we should be educating people on the census so that we should be getting the money back from our taxes that we send to the state and to the federal government. We should spend more time doing that than what we're doing right now. Thank you. It's a misjustice to everyone sitting here. All of you that have been voted in as a legislator, all of us that are sitting here with Chairman, you spelled it out. You spelled out all the villages. You spelled out all the cities that we have. We should spend more time teaching people how to do the census so that we can get our money back and we can spend it right on these roads that we have, that you keep your eyes closed. I have a Mercedes, and every time I hit I have to dodge all these potholes in Hempstead, Roosevelt, and Freeport. I feel like it's a slave trade again. It's terrible. We should start looking into, as far as the redistricting is concerned, start with the people, not with you all. Start with the people that live there. Have representatives from every district to be a part of your committee. Start with the people. That's who voting you in. I'm sad to say, there's nothing, it's called transparency. That's a myth. Stop throwing that word around because nobody's being transparent. We want the same people to keep voting so we can put the incumbent back in. Because if I start running against people, y'all not going to like it. We have to change that. And it's sad to me that people are here. He said Town of Hempstead. That place is too small to host a meeting there. We have to do things different. It's insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I'm asking you, do things differently. We are the biggest, the first county, am I correct? The first county in the nation. Let's set the example. Let's do things differently. You asked the question. Somebody said, just because you posted on the website, when you're running for re-election, you don't post anything on your website hoping people are going to come and vote for you. You get out there and you get the vote. So get out there and ask people to come to your meetings. How I found out about this, someone came to me and said there was a meeting tonight. That's how you do it when you're running. Let's do things differently. We want different results. Let's do things differently. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to point out that there are no elected officials up here. But your message is in no way diluted. Thank you. Christina Arroyo.
I'm Christina Arroyo. I am a resident of Valley Stream y también soy una puertorriqueña hispanohablante. Y solamente que quería venir aquí arriba y decir que ninguno de mis legisladores, si yo le hablo español, me van a poder entender o responder con eficacia. ¿Ok? O sea que eso es solamente un ejemplo de la falta de representación que hay aquí en este condado. Is this being recorded? Good. So that was a message for people who actually know Spanish. And my point was, that's just one tiny example of the fact that I am not represented in our legislature. I cannot say that my legislator from Valley Stream, he doesn't represent me today. He's not the legislator of people in Valley Stream 10 years ago, not even 20 years ago. So I also teach prejudice and discrimination in college, and I have 2 graduate degrees on industrial and organizational psychology with a specialization in organizational justice and pay equity. And I do that also professionally. And I can tell you right now, we have to dispel some myths here. The first myth is that this commission can operate or came about from a vacuum. You didn't. You came about from a system that is extremely partisan, from a system that's incredibly inequitable. So that's where we're starting out from right now, okay? The second myth is that this commission or what's going to happen will not be affected by that system. It will. That system carries decades of history of discrimination and oppression of minorities here in Nassau County. And it's not even a history today. We can see it today. So we have to set our expectations. Of course, we have to fight for transparency, fairness, and equity. But also, we have to know that this is not a short game. This is a long game. And what I ask of you is drop the facade that this can be done outside of the society and the systems we live in. Okay? It is partisan. What affects us is partisan. So I guess one of the questions I want to ask is, what is the role of this commission when the maps that are actually voted on by the legislature, which is majority Republican and majority non-minority, are unjust and are accepted? Is there anything you can do? That's it. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Profesora Arroyo. Le agradezco mucho por sus palabras aquí hoy día. Let me just say that, you know, as it relates to the last 2 speakers regarding the census and what Professor Arroyo said here today, from 2010 through today, the Hispanic population in Nassau County has increased by 61,150 people, a 31% change. There are now 256,000 Hispanic Americans living in Nassau County. There is not a Hispanic legislator, and there hasn't been for 13 years here. So your point is very well heard. Thank you. I'm sorry, you did bring up the Hindus, the Asians in this country. The Asian American population in Nassau County has actually increased by 60.5% to 164,000 people. And I do not believe we have an Asian legislator either. So very, very well said. Thank you.
Okay. Marvin Amazon.
How's it going?
Very fine, thank you.
I'm not going to take up much of your time, but I just wanted to say that this committee has a real opportunity to make changes now for us now and in the future. I would hope that this committee will take this opportunity responsibly and do the right thing the first time. This committee needs to make this process as transparent as possible. And as seen in the resolutions, well, first and foremost, I think that you guys should adopt the resolutions, because that's what's going to make this process as transparent as possible and get the results that we really need. Instead of come November, we're coming back to the same process, and then, like we said, we have an hour to look at the maps. I don't think that's equitable, right? I don't think that we have a real opportunity to make the changes that we need in our communities if that's the way the process is ran. Now, you want us to come up here and speak about what's happening in our communities or our concerns. But in reality, if we all take a drive, like everybody said today, if we take a drive through our communities, you can see it. It's clear. It's very clear. We don't have to come up here every time there's like a town meeting or a legislative meeting and keep telling you the same thing. Just run the records back. It's time for change in this county. Well, it's time for change in this country too, but we'll start off with this county. Now, I speak about the future just because I recently just had my firstborn son, right? And as I sit there yesterday and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking about this meeting I'm about to come to today, and I'm trying to figure out what can we do now to change what's going to happen in the future. Is he going to live in the same life in Hempstead where, like everybody's been saying, there's potholes all over the grounds? We're driving up exit 21 and we're just seeing trash on the side of the highway. Is that what we have to keep? My son's going to have to keep seeing in the next 10 years. The decisions you make in this process right now will affect us for the next 10 years. The next 10 years. My son will be 10 in school and dealing with the same problems that I'm dealing with today. That's not right. So I'm asking you again to adopt these resolutions so that we can have a fair, equitable, transparent process, and so that we're not redoing this again in another 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary Ellen Cray, did I pronounce it correctly? K-R-E-Y-E? Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Ellen Cray, proud resident of Uniondale. I am here to champion Uniondale's territorial integrity during the redistricting. In 1853, when Franklin Pierce, everybody remembers him, right? He was president. The New York Times reported the name of our area was changed to Uniondale from Turtle Hook. So we were on the side of the Union, folks. We are all about unity and community and urge redistricting be performed to preserve our geographical area and ensure it matches our legislative districts. We understand it is often a historical fact that communities of color and diversity are often fractured during redistricting. We will be observing carefully to see that our votes and our representatives and representations are fairly apportioned. I am further urging that the new districts have contiguous boundaries and avoid gerrymandering. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cray. Noah Burgos, did I pronounce it correctly? Noah? Thank you.
Good evening. I am here as not as an elected official, as an educator, and I'm here to, like everyone else, urge this chamber to do what's right within the community. You know, as a teacher, you know, I like to speak clearly and frankly with children. I like to explain to them things in a way that I think they can grasp it. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Without being rude. I think when we say that we want to change things, if you think about how this country was founded, we know that there were things that were done inappropriately and just unfairly. And so we ask for things to be done differently. And so you heard the word gerrymandering being tossed around a lot. You've heard the word transparent being tossed around a lot. And the two words that I see, those two words are the ones that I see that's used more accurately is gerrymandering, because there's no transparency. The way you guys are designing to redistrict these maps, it's not fair. We know, like I said, how the country was founded. The country was founded in a way we don't need to speak of. And so we need to fix the issues of what has gone on in the past and what could happen in the future. So things that could happen in the future can be fixed. Can be fixed if we do it the right way. We do it honestly. We do it decently. And so I'm just here for the residents of residents of Village of Hempstead and other neighboring villages just like it, so that you guys could do what's right, so that we could all live harmoniously at one point in time. Because you know things are going to just a shambles, and it's just not fair. It's not fair to a lot of people. You know, people in this community, they should stay here or leave here, but they should have the option to stay if they want to, not leave because they have to, because of what's going on through things like this. And so I just plead to you guys that do things fairly, openly, honestly, and then appease the people in this crowd, appease the people in the county. Thank you.
Thank you very much. James Hodge. James Hodge. You got it.
As you stated, James Hodge, I thank you for this opportunity of being able to address you, Chairman and Commission. I am a little saddened to hear some of the things that I'm hearing already in this first meeting about how unfair some things are when this is supposed to be a fair group. Now, I know some people on both sides, so I'm very optimistic that this will get fixed maybe by the next meeting. I'm a little shocked and I'm a little surprised to hear some things. I know some good people on this side over here, and I know some great people on this side over here, and I don't know all of you, but I know that you're God's children, and no matter what everybody here is saying, I know that God is watching each and every one of you for what you do unto the least of these. So what you do, thank you for the applause. I don't take my time now. So what you do, I want you to understand that we don't have to go over CRT and critical race theory, but you know the history, and I thank God for the young lady that got up and spoke about women, because women have only been able to vote for 102 years, and they should be more represented on here. All black people have only been able to vote since 1965. None of you probably was born then, but it's only 57 years ago. So I want all of you to understand that people and minorities have been treated very wrong. But this group right here, you have an opportunity before this county and this country to do what's right. I don't care who appointed you. You can throw your towel in and say, I'm not doing wrong. But to hear that this side has been asking this side, and I ain't really heard from too many people on this side, to hear that all of these things are going on and we're not giving fair opportunity to communities that are still going through all of these changes is unfair. So I plead with you in my 54 seconds to say that there's a great man, Jerry Weiss. He knows all of this stuff. He's sitting right there. You ain't know I was going to put you on there. But he's all over the country. He knows a lot, and I know everybody on this commission knows a lot about redistricting. So if you do what's right and not what your party wants you to do, because somebody appointed you, somebody you know, do what's right, and you will do what's right on behalf of everybody, no matter what color, no matter who they are. Do what's right and do what the law say you should do. And whether you get kicked off or not, you will say, I did what was right. Your children, your grandchildren, your family members that's watching you all over TV, and this needs to get on the internet everywhere so everybody can see who's on this commission. You have a right to do what's right. Chairman, you have a right to lead right, no matter who appointed you. All right? You have a right to do what is right. And so I'm sorry, but I ended my last couple of seconds, Chairman, because they was clapping and took my time. So there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him it is right, and that's by the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King. And remember this, Chairman, systematic racism doesn't simply rear its ugly head. It's voted on. It's enacted with policies and used to disfranchise. God bless you. My name just happened to be James Hodge.
James, thank you very much, from a person who was born long before 1965. Sanjeev Jindal.
Good evening, Chairman, and all the commissioners sitting to hear us what we need to say. And all the Nassau County residents who come in, thank you so much. Nassau County is a melting pot. Different color, different religion, different background, different ethnicity, different food, different culture. We are all living together. And we always proclaim, and we are the oldest democracy in the world. And what we understood with the word democracy mean is, there is absolutely no right to the politician to choose their voters. Let voters choose their politicians. If each of you go to the Nassau County Legislative website, you find out there is a snakes like a districts. It starts from Floral Park, end up Sands Point. And if you drive a car, it took you 30 minutes. And one part of the district divided in 4 parts. One part of the city is divided in 4 parts. And if you look at the district number 4, start somewhere, end somewhere. If you look at the district number 9, start somewhere, ends up somewhere else. We all need to understand that we are part of the democracy. And democracy is, let the voter choose their rights to elect their leaders. That's how the democracy works. And I urge you, I request you, please look into that one when it comes. You are going to redraw the districts. As one of the commissioners said, Asian population increased by 60%. What it means, when people comes to this county, they are coming for the safety, better future, better education for their kids. But people need to understand, the leaders need to understand that it has to get it done the right way. We need to have the shoulder to lean on if we have problems. I understand I have 30 seconds, but I have a lot to say. But please, we are all here. We took our time out also, and you guys took our time also to hear us. So please do the right thing. As one of my friends said, God is watching you, whatever you're doing right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to do the best I can because this is written over. Susan Gottherer? Gotterer. Yeah, 203 Atlantic Avenue in Lynbrook, yes. I apologize for...
That's okay. Hi.
How you doing?
Thanks. My name is Susan Gotterer. I'm the director of the Nassau County New York Civil Liberties Union. As you know, there's already a problem in a lot of this process. The deadline of March versus the timing of the petitions having to be filed, and advocates, many advocates learning of the scheduling of this meeting alone from news media outlets and not from the website. I went on the website yesterday and again this morning, and I really didn't see much about the other meetings that are scheduled. We don't really know what the process is going to be. We need to know if and when you have hired mappers and staffers and what that hiring process looked like. We don't know if you've met previously or how many times you're going to meet without having public hearings. We need to know the process. We don't know if there are going to be hearings after the maps are drawn, how many, how much time is the public going to have to look at those maps. I hear you all talking about how we're going to try to create that sort of a process, but we don't know is really the answer because you guys haven't put together that process yet as far as how to work together as a body. We are curious as to why this is getting started so late. The commission was seated in May. We'd also, what are you going to do about interpretation services other than Spanish? We have, as you've heard many people say here tonight, we have many different languages and many different kinds of people here in Nassau County, and we're offering a little bit of Spanish interpretation tonight. I encourage you all to think very carefully, those of you who don't speak Spanish, how it felt when Christine came over and spoke Spanish. How did that feel? I would just like you to sit with that for a couple of minutes. How did that feel? Because that's the way so many people feel all the time in this county. So your meetings all over the county are going to need to have language access in languages other than Spanish, and hopefully in Spanish. As advocates, we'll be looking for cracking and packing and caretaking to give in communities of interest their due. We'll also be we're also going to be watching carefully for the skinny bridges and those weird shapes that we see in gerrymandering. As you can see, we have a lot of questions that are not answered yet, and we really want you to know that we're watching. The other thing is that I just want to say is what we heard here tonight at the start of this meeting, it reminded me of trying to, referee bad college group work, okay? If somebody makes a phone call, they've made a phone call, that's reaching out. If somebody doesn't return the phone call, that person doesn't want to collaborate. That's my decision as a professor when that crap happens, okay? So I also want to say that anybody organizing here tonight, the League of Women Voters and myself and other people can provide public education to your communities on this process. We demand transparency, and it doesn't look like we're going to get a lot from this crew the way you've been operating already. Thank you.
Ms. Goddard, excuse me, Ms. Goddard, may I ask you a quick question? I apologize for the acoustics, and I apologize that you couldn't hear me.
Yeah.
So, as the Nassau County lead for the ACLU, do you have recommendations on best practices, recommendations on the redistricting process that you would like to share with us that we should take into account as we consider the resolutions, as we consider what process we want to establish here on out? Do you have recommendations, specific recommendations, that you'd like to share with us now?
Well, there's a lot, and I will be more than happy to forward all of them. I think a really good starting point is making sure that maybe you can post notices way in advance of the meetings instead of the legal open government threshold. That shows goodwill, okay? So really, you know what this is. You know what's been done, right? You know how this has been done in the past. One of the best practices would be to get a commission that reflects the population of the county. That might be important. Make sure that this is transparent. Make sure you have a process going into this so this bickering doesn't happen in advance. Make sure you have a process, okay? Other than that, the technical aspects, we have a lot of recommendations that I will be more than happy to forward, for sure.
That would be terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, just to make sure that everybody knows, we have Language Line, which I believe is goes up to 165 different languages. It's over here on the wall. That's been here since we started this day, and it's available to anybody who does not speak any one of those 165, whether it's Spanish, Farsi, Hindi, or any other language we might be.
Does that mean that they would get headsets
They have
and be hooked into Language Line?
Right over here, they have the tablets that can be used, and you're welcome to go and give it a shot just to look at it if you want to.
Yes.
It was. Maybe you weren't here for it. Maybe because of the bad acoustics you didn't hear it. But now you have heard it.
Well, I would recommend that you actually post that on the website in advance then as well, because you might get a different representation of people if they understood that they might understand what's going on here. So that might be a best practice as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you to come back at some point to one of the hearings, whatever we decide the hearing dates are, to put your recommendations, if you do have them in writing, so we can put them into the record. Some of the other speakers have talked about districts that look like snakes that are going through different communities, those little bridges, and compactness is a very important part of this process and part of the legal analysis that's going to be done for these maps. So to that end, I mean, if we look at the maps today that exist for the county legislature, any political scientist using a statistical analysis and the methodologies and formulas that are, that they use, analyzing these maps, they do not meet any of the acceptable standards.
Correct.
So the maps today and the compactness today, under any acceptable statistical analysis through the lens of political science, are illegal and unacceptable.
Correct.
I'm going to take a little personal I think for you here. I wish you were around in North Hempstead when they did their redistricting, and maybe you can share your best practices with them as well. Yeah, I know the skinny lines and the odd-looking things. It might be helpful in the future. Okay? Thank you. Now, Susan Cools. Susan Cools from Baldwin.
Good evening. What I would like to say to you is this. I know that personally I am so sick and tired to death of this red and blue nonsense. This has got to stop. This has divided and is ruining our country. It is ruining our municipalities. And at some point, people that are supposed to be involved in public service have to take some accountability and realize that this is not what you're supposed to be doing. Because you know what? The money that pays for everything that gets done, it's not red or blue. It's green. We're sick of this. And many of us work hard every single day to teach our young people to collaborate, to be respectful, to listen to each other's ideas. That is the only way that you can make progress and that you can move forward. But none of the people that seem to be in a position that supposedly work for us and represent us do any of these things that we are trying to teach our kids. It's a horrible example. It's got to stop. When you lay your head on your pillow at night, I mean, are you at peace? And you should be. So when you are going forward with this process, think about what you are doing and how it is going to affect people in their homes, not just overall in general. People in their homes working hard to try to make life work, and how what you're going to do will affect that. And all people, not red, not blue, all people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maria Jordan Alalam, did I pronounce that correctly? No? Please correct me as soon as you get here.
Maria Jordan Owalam.
Oh, well, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Maria Jordan Owalam. I am a Freeport resident, and I'm president of the Freeport School District Board of Education. I'm here today because once again, we're in a critical moment where immigrant and communities of color are still asking themselves, how can we ensure our voices are heard? I cannot think of a more important way for us to do so than to engage in how our representation is developed and carved out. We live in one of the most segregated areas in the country. Is this really what we want to be on the top 10 list of nationally? Our public schools continue to be segregated, creating even more inequities along racial and socioeconomic lines. Many of us already live in areas where we constantly have to fight to be heard. We have to fight to achieve environmental justice for our children. We have to fight for the availability of resources. We even have to fight for basic quality of life services. We shouldn't also have to fight to simply have a right afforded to us as residents and citizens of this country, the right to fair representation. As an educational leader in my community, I stand before you all tonight to implore upon this body to create a process that the people can believe in and that we can trust in for a brighter and more equitable future for all our children. We live in a democracy, and as such, we need our representatives to lead with transparency and to represent us all. We will continue to show up, engage, and fight for fair maps that will result in legislative districts that accurately reflect Nassau County in 2022 and for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Carmen Pinheiro. Did I pronounce that correctly? Carmen?
Good evening, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Carmen Piñero. I'm former Deputy Mayor of the Incorporated Village of Freeport, lifelong resident of Nassau County, and a taxpayer. The process of redistricting is an opportunity that our community has once every 10 years, with the goal of achieving equitable representation that mirrors what our communities look like based on data from the latest census. I can tell you the Nassau County demographics, particularly the fast-growing Latino population, as well as the Asian populations, have changed drastically in the last 10 years. And yet, Nassau County has zero representation of Latinos and Asian Americans, either in elected office or even in government leadership. If I recall, the last Latino legislator was one of the commissioner, David Mejia, that's part of the commission here today. This is not only disappointing, but it's also a sign of how our communities have been ignored and dismissed. Please know that our community is paying attention. We will continue to engage in this process because for far too long, those who stand to benefit from the status quo have kept us in the dark. In a process that is supposed to produce maps that continue to divide our communities. Communities with shared interests, concern, culture, to suppress our vote and silence our voices in government. As we know, this census was affected by the pandemic and the fear-mongering tactics of selective few, which hinder not only the full participations of members of our respective communities for fear of retaliation, but also to not be counted. I can tell you that those tactics, while used to oppress a selected group of few, actually hinder not only our communities, but the county and the state, because we lose vital funding from the federal government as a result. As a resident of Nassau County, as a voter, and as a stakeholder, it is of this community I demand this process to be open and transparent, and that it results in fair maps. Y quiero darle la gracia a la profesora Arroyo porque dijo algo importante. Aquí no tenemos representación no solamente de la comunidad latinoamericana, de la comunidad asiática, pero también de la comunidad musulmana. Y no solamente eso, esta audiencia está siendo televisada y muchas personas no saben lo que las demás personas están diciendo aquí porque no está siendo traducido. Tenemos que esperar que sea un proceso transparente y que todos podemos comunicarnos. And Chairman, I just said in Spanish that I hope that since it's being televised, and you mentioned that there's 160 languages and language access, that at the bottom, it's, members that are watching live can actually see and hear not only what I said, what you are saying, and the rest of the members that are here, so they can understand what the process is about. That is what full integration of the diverse community of Nassau County is. Thank you.
Thank you. H. Scotty Gardine Codes, representing the NAACP New York State Conference.
Good evening, everyone. I have standing with me the NAACP that we represent in New York State, branches, presidents, different positions they hold. I thank you, commissioners, for hearing us tonight. My name is H. Scotty Codes, and I'm the chair of Civic Engagement, New York State, and the 2020 Census and Redistricting Coordinator for the NAACP New York State. I came in tonight expecting to explain what redistricting is all about, but as I was walking in, you were explaining, someone was explaining, I'm not sure which chairperson, what redistricting is, so we'll skip over that. What do we want, NAACPers? We want to have individuals elected or already in place with the fight to protect our community. It is unfortunate that we are not privy to seeing a map today. Let me say, however, maps should be drawn with community cohesion in mind and not division. Lines should not be drawn that divide communities of interest, which creates difficulty to find representatives to champion the causes and advocates for them. Our NAACP requests tonight of you, however, the maps be drawn in our black and brown communities should remain contiguous and intact. As all communities, the same should apply. With fair-minded representatives and fairly drawn maps, we will be afforded the same entitlement and services as other neighboring communities. Let me digress for a second. 10 years ago, I was here testifying, and with me, I have my grandson, who we have to protect with whatever maps you intend to draw. He was just a baby. Now he's 10 years old, and I want him to stand with me. He's the third vice chair of the Lakeview Democratic NAACP Youth Council. His name is Parker. We realize also that our communities are generally the ones that must always fight for services that many times are automatically given to other communities, such as repairing of roads and many entitlements of federal, state, and local services. Although this is not the drawing of the New York State Assembly District lines, we in the 18th Assembly District are concerned that our communities remain intact legislatively, as was the Assembly lines. Partisan redistricting has a negative impact on representative democracy. This brings us to gerrymandering that we all are familiar with. Back in 2013, we made a passionate plea on behalf of the NAACP to our brothers and sisters across the state of New York to join with us and to support us as we continue the fight against gerrymandered district maps that were designed by Nassau County Majority Party for the Nassau County residents. The majority map would have moved more than 300 residents back in 2013 to accommodate their gerrymandering efforts of control and power electorally. Our communities will pay close attention to how the lines are being drawn. Finally, we want the NAACP, we want fair redrawing of these legislative maps, and we will continue to make our presence known at every meeting that you put in place. Let me add also, it's most unfortunate that this meeting was called in such a short notice. And thank the Lord, we have the room pretty packed. And as the lady spoke before, this is not about red or blue. It's about people. And we want to make sure that we are represented fairly when you draw your lines. Thank you. And on behalf of Hazel Dukes, our leader, our state president, and all of our branches that's present, thank you for the evening. Thank you.
Ms. Codes, can you hear me? Ms. Codes, can you hear me?
I'm sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
But first, I want to thank you for being here tonight. I want to thank the NAACP for being here tonight. And I want to thank you for your leadership in the NAACP and all that you do to advocate for our democracy. Now, my question for you, I understand that you were involved in 2013. You testified, you followed the process. How do you feel that process went, and what can we learn from 2013, from the 2012-2013 process as we do our work here today?
Mr. Pernig, I must say I am disappointed. From 2013 to now, we are not seeing the transparency and the accountability that we expected to see 10 years later. We're not. There's still a fight going on. We're still assuming that red and blue is all about. It's about the people. Someone testified before and said, when Mayor Wayne Hall was a mayor in the village of Hempstead, he used to always say, when he drive through Garden City and go to Rockville Center, he doesn't want to know the difference between Hempstead, what Hempstead looks like. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. It's the same thing from even when he was mayor. So, nothing has changed. The fight continues. And we, and NAACP, will make sure that we stay in the struggle and that we continue the fight. We are not going to back down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Matthew Ott.
Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to speak. My name is Matthew Ott, and I currently reside in Mineola. The main objective of this meeting is to redraw the Nassau County legislative map in a way that brings fairness. I think that's the main theme of this meeting. Fairness to all residents, regardless of political affiliation. We have seen both parties attempt to manipulate and in certain situations successfully redraw the maps in their favor, a process known as gerrymandering. While independent committees are a step forward, we're still seeing a divide between the two parties, similar to what happened during the New York State redistricting process. In order to ensure a fair process for all residents of Nassau County, we must use mathematics to take out as much bias out of the equation as possible. One equation that has been used to measure compactness in a district is the Polsby-Popper method, P-O-L-S-B-Y-P-O-P-P-E-R. Has anybody heard of this equation? Okay. So as I said, it is a mathematical equation that uses area and perimeter to calculate the compactness of a district on a scale between 0 and 100. It is my recommendation that this mathematical equation be strongly considered during the redistricting process. All 19 districts should have a minimum Polsby-Popper score of 30. And to put this into perspective, during the New York State redistricting process, all 9 state Senate seats had scores over 30, so it can be done. In summation, in order to remove bias and injustice from the redistricting process, we need mathematics, not partisanship. We need shapes, not squiggles. Yes, we saw the squiggle in LD 14. That is simply not acceptable. I do have a little bit more time, but I did want to mention, as people mentioned, the systemic racism that that has been going on. I think one of them briefly mentioned, the founding of this nation and the history. The founders of this nation were slave owners, just straight up. And in this time, I just want to point out, people talked about the percentage of Hispanic Americans in Nassau County, percentage of Asian Americans, percentage of African Americans. There's about 25%, I believe, 20 to 25% African Americans how many of those African Americans live in District 1 through 3 compared to Districts 4 through 19? Thank you. That was good. Thank you.
I wanted to thank you for your testimony. I especially,
Questions?
yeah, especially appreciate you bringing up the Paul's v. Popper statistical model. And I agree with you. The current legislative districts as drawn perform poorly, and there's about 10 different models. And I think it's the responsibility of this commission to reference all of them in drawing fair and equitable districts for everybody. You know, another way to determine compactness is, you know, you'll know it if you see it. And I think as the gentleman over here demonstrated when he held that map up, I think most of the districts, you know, that you would expect failed that as well. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And, you know, we definitely will be referencing these statistical models in drawing our current district, the new districts for the county.
Okay. Thank you.
I think we're agreeing with you because the using math and the various 10 statistical models that political scientists use, by any one of those standards, the maps as they are drawn today fail.
Okay, Mimi Pierre Johnson for the Elmont Cultural Center.
Good evening. My name is Mimi Pierre Johnson from Elmont Culture Center, and I'm also a member of the League of Women Voters Tonight, the redistricting coalition. Before I even say anything, and I hope you indulge me with a couple of more minutes since you gave other people some. Before we started in 2011, when the whole redistricting process was happening, many of us in Elmont were excited about being a part of the process here, the civic process. And I'd like to say to all my Haïtiens, ou gon moun ka bataille pour. Parce que c'est pas seul Panyol, c'est pas seul Asian, mais Haïtien là too. So that's from the Haitian community. So in the Haitian community in Elmont, we started to be very civically engaged. And this is what our map looked like. This is what our district looked like. And then this is what they did after. So we were bamboozled, all right? This is how we were before. And after we were, this is what they did, okay? So talk about compactness, right? In order for me to go through my entire legislative 3rd district, I have to go through another county, through the marshes, the water, back into Rosedale, and then back into Nassau County, right? So already that's wrong, and I'm so happy that all of you understand the redistricting laws and how you're supposed to do it. Many of the people that made those decisions 10 years ago, many of them are not even with us, either no longer elected officials or they have since passed away. And that is super important because when you think about what can happen in someone's 10 years, right? There's so many people that's going to give you the stats and all that. I want you to understand what happens with the decision you're going to make on these maps. My daughter was in college, freshman. She's now a 31-year-old married woman. I am now 60. When I am 70, you think that I want to go through this again? You have the opportunity to make things right for Elmont, Valley Stream, Legislative 3rd, and everybody sitting in here. And I'm going to tell you why this was a bamboozle, and this right here, to me, is a sham. And until I see the right thing happen, then I'll have faith again in a redistricting coalition, a redistricting panel. When they said to us, we're going to hear you, meetings happen, we were here from 11 o'clock till 6 o'clock at night. The shuffling of the papers happened with who wanted to speak. I remember that. We're a little bit older now. We're a little bit bigger now. But I'm going to tell you something. Please indulge me, because you need to understand what your decision did, not you. After that redistricting process, on the state level, my street, Crystal Street, in Elmont, look it up. My house, specifically my house, the line was drawn so that my neighbors across the street was Senate District 7, and I was Senate District 9. On the legislative level, I already showed you what that was like, and now they pushed us all the way to the 5 towns. There were many residents from the 5 towns here begging, do not break us up. They did it anyway. So now we became a part of the broken 5 towns. So on the state level, we just won. Because I don't know how many of you know this in Nassau County, but Elmont and Valley Stream, for the past 11 years, was represented on the federal level in Queens. In Queens. I'm still paying Nassau County taxes. My taxes didn't go down. But we were represented by a Queens representative. So thank God, and some of my fellow Democrats might get mad, but thank God the Republicans sued to give us another chance so that we can get Elmont and Valley Stream back in Nassau County. And guess what? 5.5 hours later, 5.5 hours to Bath, New York, is where that hearing was held. Well, you know, I've been in the struggle for a long time. I went to Bath, 5.5 hours to Bath, and I told the special master and the judge what had happened in Elmont, and that we deserve to be represented the right way. We deserve, as Nassau County taxpayers and voters, to be represented in Nassau County. So you can see why I don't have a lot of faith in anything that you say. Because you know the law. We know it too because we have educated ourselves. Our coalition is growing. And at the end of the day, May 6th, I stood alone and I looked around and I said, I don't care. The only way that we can be made whole is to put us back in Nassau County. I went against a lot of my friends. But you know what? I care about my community more than friendship, political party, or anything else. And I am begging you, don't do this to us again. All you have to do, follow the redistricting law, follow the charter, and come into our communities. Stop making us come to you. Come to us. I am one of the trustees in the Elmont Library. Come to Elmont. Everyone here has a library in their district. Go to those libraries. Because unfortunately, we don't have the resources in the black and brown community for all of us to have a community center so that we all could do the things that we need to do for our community. So compactness, right? And lastly, we work very hard in Elmont and in Valley Stream to make sure that we're counted well in the census. We raised the response rate by 10% from 2010. That wasn't for anyone to stay in power or to crack and pack the communities of color so that they lose their voice. That was so we would have enough population to have our districts well represented. And secondly, we have enough minority majority to have more districts. And you should start thinking about that, and we will be watching. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at looks like 10 minutes to 8. 10 minutes after 8. Okay? Thank you very much.
me forget it here. Oh. There you go.
Okay. All right, because we are working, the league is working with a math person and a mathematician.
Okay.
From Hofstra, relating to mapping.
Okay.
So that's why I was asking.
Right, yeah. The Polsky-Coffer method, that was the method that they used in the redistricting. When I went to the state redistricting, New York and redistricting and you, that was the compactness method that they were using.
I like that website.
Yeah, that was very, very informative, yeah.
To me, that's the best website.
Right, and if you're able to, hopefully we'll have something similar at the county level. Yeah.
And we used to be working on them, but on Hofstra. But I was about to use and you presented it on maps and they were
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I had no idea what was going on last week. I was still in the Western. I don't think. Yeah.
We're going to complete, ladies and gentlemen, if you can come in, we're going to restart this. And we're going to, from this point going forward, we're going to stick to the three-minute rule. We have signing people who need to be out of here by 9 p.m. And there's other matters that are on the record. So if you please take your seat. The next speaker on my list is Jeffrey Daniels. Jeffrey Daniels. Thank you.
Now it's off. Good evening, Jeffrey Daniels. I'm the Deputy Mayor of the Village of Hempstead, and I think there was a lot of great things said here tonight. So I do thank everyone for coming out, including yourselves, taking time out to participate. But I just want to call out one thing, that we should learn from the last 3 years. We should learn about what happens when you marginalize communities. When communities go unrepresented, you get Charlottesville, where people march chanting that they will not be replaced. You get hundreds of thousands of black and brown people dying from coronavirus because they have underlying conditions from a failing health system. Lack of representation. Our government is made up of checks and balances for a reason. It's not just security, it's also about representation. And everyone up here today that's on this commission, you're at the front line. You're the security of our representation. It doesn't mean that your candidate may not win in that election that district. It just means they need to listen to everyone in the district. That's what's important, that you listen and you represent the entire district. And that's what everyone here is looking for. Because if you keep marginalizing people and not representing them as you should, in today's day and age, through social media, they unionize, and you get January 6th. But it stops here if you do what you're supposed to do. It's not a party thing. It's a people thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to ask people to keep themselves to the 3 minutes. Our signing people are due to be out of here at 9 p.m. So I beg your indulgence and move forward with Olena Nix.
Here, okay. Good evening. So I'm here to speak to you tonight, this evening, to ask you for a fair redistricting process, one that is well advertised and encourages community participation. Often we have seen across the country redistricting processes where it has encouraged voter suppression, and we cannot have that here. While the rest of the country is advancing in diversity and inclusivity, Nassau County, one of the most segregated places to live, is regressing. In Uniondale, where I'm from, we are facing the battle of East Garden City, where it is a name change to make the community seem more aesthetically pleasing to live. But Uniondale is already an aesthetic place to live. Not many people can say they live where there are 2 colleges and a very popular stadium in their backyard and a high school that gives an EMT program and a pre-nursing program. However, if the lines are redistricted unfairly and that prevails, East Garden City will win that battle. For a community that generates such high revenue and assets, we still receive such a lack of attention and care, and we even see disparities in things like unfair amounts of homeless shelters, where we are receiving over 50% of those, where our counterparts are not seeing those in other neighboring towns. As a volunteer firefighter, a captain, let me add, and a library trustee, I do not want to see the consequences of unfair redistricting process, as it will not only hurt our community, but take away the things that makes us great.
Thank you very much. Kristen Clodfelter?
Good evening. As you said, my name's Kristen Clodfelter. I'm here on behalf of the very small community of South Hempstead, and I want to reiterate what Mrs. Millay said to you earlier tonight, to make sure that you hear it more than once from more than one resident, that we are a very, very tiny community, and we very much appreciate the fact that in previous redistricting efforts, we were brought back together as a community. So we want to make the very specific plea that our priority in terms of issues is that South Hempstead remain one community in terms of how it gets districted and who our legislator is, so that that way our voice is not diluted even further. Because we're not an incorporated village, so we don't have a mayor, we don't have one person or one board of trustees representing our interests. It's just us. We are an engaged and active community, as you can see tonight. Given how small we are, the fact that we had 4 or 5 or 6 residents show up is pretty impressive. I'm appreciative of everyone that came tonight. As a secondary priority, if I can dream, I would ask that you all employ logic in practicality in how you address this issue of the maps and redistricting. Right now, one of the biggest institutions in our neighborhood is Molloy. And I think it's thoroughly odd that at some point in the past, the powers that be made it so that Molloy is considered to be a part of Rockville Center. And as such, Molloy has a separate legislator that they would go to for their interests and that they would answer to in terms of their responsibility and accountability. But the issues that arise from an institution as large as Molloy University, now university, not college anymore, is as it grows, the parking issues, the traffic issues, much of the fallout and the development that happens with regard to that institution should be addressed. But as residents, when we have a concern, it's very difficult to figure out, even as an active and engaged member of the community, who you talk to that's actually going to respond to you. Because my representatives in my community, whether it be the town of Hempstead or Nassau County or at the state level, are not necessarily the same folks that Molloy would be speaking to, because as of right now, they have a different legislative district than we do. But if you look at it, if you physically drive down the road or just engage your own familiarity, they are, for all intents and purposes, located in my community. The traffic they generate, the parking situation, the houses that they continue to buy up are not impacting Rockville Center, even though we like to pretend that they are part of the Rockville Center Village. So I would ask you to pay attention to those kinds of issues should they arise as a secondary concern. And I appreciate all of your service and what you're doing for the community in terms of examining the issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Raja Singh.
Good evening to this committee. Thank you for the opportunity for having this meeting. I would encourage you guys to make this more accessible so that even though I'm not sure if this is being live streamed or not, if it is, where and how do people access it? Secondly, the other question I have is it possible for us to actually have the district maps on display here? Although we're all here for the reasons of getting equitable districts, some people want to visually see these maps so they can better understand where they're located and what district they're from. I live in Hicksville. I also work in Hicksville as well. And I know firsthand how badly it's been separated. It's shared between 3 different legislators. Hicksville for the last 10 years has changed drastically, especially with the demographics. We've mentioned before, the South Asian population has grown by 60%. A large part of that population is moving to Hicksville, me included. And I know this firsthand because of the business that I am in. I'm an attorney. A lot of my clients live in Hicksville. They work in Hicksville. And I see it every day. Their questions, their concerns, why they can't get help, why they can't get representation, because they don't know where to go. They don't know who to speak to. There's language barriers. There's a ton of problems. And Hicksville being largest part of the district is in the center of the district. So we make all the revenue in Hicksville. We get all the taxes paid, and the other areas surrounding Hicksville benefit because they get the new parks, they get the new football equipment, they get the new fields, they get the new golf courses. Their roads are significantly better. We have the train station in Hicksville, and we bear the burden of all the costs and the maintenance, but everyone else comes and travels there. Same thing with our Hicksville roads and downtowns. It's looked like it's a ghost town. But largely the South Asian community that's growing there in crazy numbers needs better representation. And I know that because I ran for office last year as a legislator for Hicksville. And the reason I couldn't win is because Hicksville, my community, the South Asians, are split up into 3 different groups or 3 different districts. And it's just not fair to them because being the largest growing community in Hicksville, why don't we have our own representation? It's not fair to us. It's not equitable to us. And that goes for the same for the other districts, whether it's Uniondale or Hempstead. They all have the same concerns and the same problems. And the one thing that you hear again and again, it's always black and brown communities that suffer the most. And you say it time and again, it's been going on for decades. And at some point, something's got to give. And this is your chance collectively to right that wrong and make these districts equitable. And it's not necessarily about equity, it's also about effectiveness. We want representation that's going to be fair, but also effectiveness for the people that actually live there. So I encourage you guys to consider all these things, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Beatrice Braxton.
Good evening. Thanks for this meeting. I just would like to find out the outcome of this meeting later on, that we, the attendees, will find out the results of this meeting, that it doesn't go on deaf ears. I was going to talk about Hempstead. Like I said, I'm Beatrice Braxton, and I'm a very proud resident in Hempstead for the last 24 years. They talk about Hempstead so many negative ways. We support one of the largest school budgets and highest taxes in real estate taxes in Long Island. They call us poor because we use our taxes. Really, we pay the taxes when we have the representations, and they're not using our money the right way for all the social issues that we have. I've been around. I've been involved in the community. So, like you said, the Hispanic community, the Haitian community are growing, and we don't see the support that we need when we come to we will go to all the entities. Like, I know for a fact that a Hispanic person can go to the police department. They don't have a translator there to report a crime. They don't have a translator. It's very hard for them to communicate with the police. You said they have some lines, telephone lines for translate. They don't know this exists here. So communication is power, and it's a lot of misinformation to the Hispanic community, the Haitian community. So we need the support. We need to know the outcome of this meeting. It's just a meeting, and we don't know what happened afterwards. Thank you.
You're welcome. Everything will be posted on the website, and I would commend to you that you take a look at that on a regular basis because things will change. Meta J. Meriday.
Where does one begin? First, I'm sorry that I missed all the apparently eloquent speeches earlier today. I will definitely try to keep on time, but since I'm almost like a regular in this location, sometimes it's very difficult for me, but I'll do my best. I encourage all those who are here or listening or streaming, redistricting, granted, is important. Budgeting, much more so. It would be my hope that we have as many people, if not more, in the next couple of weeks, because Nassau County, which has a budget of about $3.2 billion, that's where the funding comes for the police department, for those that want translators, in their local districts, for those that need those roads repaired, for those that need those resources in the school districts, for those like, I live in Baldwin now, been there about 20 years. I, along with Scotty Coates and others, we were largely trying to fight for what we thought was right and equitable here 10 years ago, knowing full well it was not going to happen. But at the same time, we were at the town hall, Hempstead Town Hall, to fight for their undercover, under-table redistricting process that now in the community that I live in, we have 3 council people representing our small little 2-mile wide, 2-mile long, maybe 1.5 miles wide district. 3, okay? We still have bad roads. We still have no development downtown. We literally a couple of weeks ago had to fight to get access to the $10 million that took us almost 10 years to win from the state because the town was going to put that on a moratorium. So I know that's not your discussion here, but we're talking about redistricting. I like somebody who said earlier, I have very little confidence in this process because the 19 that generally sit on that body are the ones that are going to decide, because you're basically claiming that you're going to tell them how it's going to operate, but they're going to tell you what's going to happen because they want to keep their jobs. Because the trio and the triad in Nassau County is patronage, nepotism, cronyism, period. So you can say whether it's red, whether it's blue, and you're squeezing what little green you can get out of us, but the embarrassment comes when you have a CEO of a major global financial institution who has to come here to tell you and us what we have been saying here for decades, that Long Island, America's original suburb, is one of the most segregated communities in the country. So again, I have very little confidence in this, and I will, with all due respect, try to stay within the 3 minutes. Lastly, I will say it is my hope, though, that this format here does not replicate the state's debacle that many of us are still trying to recover from. Because we can only rise from the ashes so many times, but trust me, like the Swahili quote that says, "A luta continua," the struggle will continue and we will still be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Justin Brown.
Good evening. We had a great turnout, and we had some powerful speakers up here today. But I do want to say that, we do need to do our due diligence in getting our communities to really understand what's going on in this process. Redistricting is probably one of the most important things that can happen within Nassau County. And the trickle-down effect is something that people really need to understand, because it affects so much within our communities. It affects our schools. It affects homes. It affects our kids. So we have to do our due diligence as a community, as people who are on this board. We need to really get to the communities, get to the people, and really let them know what redistricting is, because many people don't know what that is. I think we have a good opportunity right now. We have a great opportunity. We have an opportunity to get it right this time, right? We don't have to wait 10 years or 5 years. The time is now where we can go out and we can provide the proper things that is necessary for us to redistrict and have our communities set the way it's supposed to be. Let's not go back to where we were 10 years ago by redrawing lines. not for the benefit of the communities and the students and our kids and our residents, but for the benefit of people who are elected officials, for the benefits of the parties, because that's not what we want at this time. We want elected officials who have direct benefit and who wants to invest in our communities and who wants to really make change, not have individuals who are drawn to make sure that they benefit. So please, let's get it right this time and have everyone who needs to get it done the right way. All right? Thank you.
Justin, I just want to say thank you for your remarks. You and I had the opportunity to serve together on Witthrup's Institutional Review Board for some period of time, and I respect your words and I give weight to them, and I just want to say thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. I just want to say, our communities, we don't want to, for so long, our voices have been diluted because of the way redistricting has been. And we don't want to further dilute that. We want to make sure that, it's equitable, that it's fair, and that, we're given a chance where we have representatives who can really represent us and, voice our concerns to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cloriana Griffith.
Good evening. My name is Cloriana Griffith. I'm also one of Hempstead Village trustee. I would like to just ask that when you do this redistrict, that you make the corrections that need to be made, because what I want you guys to think of right now is think of what's going to happen 10 years from now. Things are changing, and you don't know who your kids' kids are going to marry. They might marry my grandchild. They might marry someone in my family. And guess what? When you make these redistricting, it might affect them too. Think of the businesses that's going to be affected. Think of the vets that's going to be affected. We don't want to just check the box because of poverty reason. We want to check the box because of the good reason. We want the same opportunity that every other district get. And unfortunately, for too long, we're always being affected. When we talk about going in from one district to the next district, and we talk about that, it's fair, it's not. Garden City, Hempstead, it's not fair. Rockville Center, Roosevelt, there's nothing fair about that. Mineola, Elmont, there's nothing fair about that. We want that when you travel through the different district, that guess what? It's fair. And remember what I said, that think about the future generation. It might not affect us right now, but 10 years from now, do we really know where we're going to be? Do we know where our children are going to be? We don't. So that's why when you do this, I ask you to please do it fairly so that your future generation, my future generation, and me and you don't suffer by this decision. It needs to be done straight, and it needs to be corrected. Let us fix the mistake that was done prior. We don't want to check the box any longer because of the poverty line. We're tired of people coming into our district because they're trying to get the funds. We want people to come into our district because they want to have fun time, not poverty time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lisa Ortiz.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Ortiz. I am a resident of Lakeview and a member of the Lakeview Civic Association. Tonight, I ask you to consider the people that you were appointed to represent and how the redrawing of lines can impact the communities directly. As a member of the Hamlet of Lakeview, which is a majority-minority community with a rich history, Lakeview is comprised of residents who have a zip code either under Rockville Center, which is 11570, or West Hempstead, 11552. But yet, we're still Lakeview. One way you can determine that you are entering the boundaries of Lakeview or the community of Lakeview is at our boundary lines. The mere appearance of our boundary lines is not comparable to anything that you would see when you enter Rockville Center, when you enter the West Hempstead or Malvern or Lynbrook or any of the neighboring communities. Tonight I ask, as you're drawing these lines, that you really consider what it looks like for us to have people that represent us directly. We don't have a mayor. We don't have anyone that represents Lakeview specifically. We have many people in our community that will speak up, but we also need people that will represent us and tend to our needs as a community. When you're redrawing the lines, I also would like to make sure that you understand what we just experienced during the state redrawing or redistricting process. That time when Lakeview was split up into 2 assembly districts. Lakeview was also split up into 2 senatorial districts. As of now, we currently share a district with Malvern. And that is also divided. We're made up of 3 different communities that utilize one district. We also have a different senator that represents one side of the street, and then another senator who represents Lakeview, or the other side of the ocean, as they call it. When you're drawing the lines, I ask you to consider what it looks like for our community to have one member to represent the community as a whole. So I would ask you to make sure that you maintain us in one district so that we can have one voice speaking up and representing our community, not like we have had in years past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to skip down to item 5 on the agenda, which are the resolutions filed by the Democratic Caucus. Is there somebody here to speak in regard to that? Could I have your name?
Did you fill out a speaker's sheet?
Yes.
Bear with us just a moment. We'll look for it.
Sure.
I have it here. Casey T. Marlowe.
Jay. It's okay. My handwriting's terrible. I'm left-handed. Yep. All right. Thank you for letting me speak. I have heard the concerns of my friends and fellow citizens tonight about this commission and about the Republicans in the legislature and the fears that they will not respect this process and pursue a scheme to gerrymander a county that President Biden won in 2020 by 76,000 votes. If they choose to do what my friend Dave Mejias described, they can rig the Nassau County Legislature to have a Republican supermajority in what is a bluish-purple county. What we have here is a lack of trust. I find it hard to trust a Republican political establishment in this county who picked this commission, a Republican establishment who accepted help and money in the last election from the radical far-right New York State Young Republicans Club, who are hosting disgraced former Navy officer Jack Posobiec, who was kicked out of the Navy for being a racist lunatic, and the insane 9/11 truther Marjorie Taylor Greene to their yearly gala. How can I trust a Republican political establishment that fundraises with racist, seditious lunatics like that? Back to the point, the Republicans in the legislature and on this commission, you will show the people of Nassau County who you are with how you handle this process. Will you be transparent? Will you respect our American values of fairness and equal representation, or choose illiberal partisanship and disrespect the voters of Nassau County? The denial of representation is why we had our revolution. To deny that now to black and brown communities of our county disrespects everything that America is supposed to stand for. Shout out to all my friends from Hempstead, Uniondale, Elmont, Freeport, Hicksville. My friend Raja Singh, he was definitely right about Hicksville being denied representation, and Farmingdale, and also East Massapequa, where I have a lot of friends who, and this is a school thing, but it's emblematic of this problem, where in Massapequa, Farmingdale has a big chunk of Amityville that goes to Farmingdale School District because of redlining. And in East Massapequa, they are within sight of Berner Middle School. They have to go to Amityville School District across county lines. That problem, while this commission has nothing to do with that, is emblematic, though, of this problem that we have all come out to discuss tonight on such short notice. So, yeah, that's all I got. Thank you for letting me speak, and have a great night.
Thank you. Back to the resolutions. Is there going to be someone to present those?
ask Mike, why don't you present the resolutions?
Sure. So I'll start with Resolution 1. And this is the resolution that we've referred to multiple points throughout the day, focusing on a schedule for public hearings. This is a resolution that's designed to have a robust public schedule covering every corner of the county to give members of the public a full opportunity to participate in the process. Now, we saw today there were over 120 people who showed up. 2.5 felt like almost 3 hours of testimony, but a significant interest from people all across the county in having their voices heard. So there's clearly an interest in having a robust schedule. We've had requests from some of the people who spoke today to go into their communities, into communities like Elmont, into communities like Freeport, so we can have an opportunity to meet people where they are and hear directly from members of the public. Now, it is required under the charter to have 6 votes to approve any action. I can read from the charter. The Temporary Districting Advisory Commission shall take all action by not less than 6 affirmative votes of its members, end quote. That's from section 113 of the charter. So we're proposing a resolution that we hope can earn the votes of all members of this commission, so we can formally adopt a lawful schedule that's robust, that goes into all of the communities in our county. Our proposal calls for 11 hearings before draft maps are released, an additional 7 hearings after draft maps are released. That way we have an opportunity to hear comments on the maps that we're considering. It also ensures that we have an opportunity to collaborate and compromise and try and reach a consensus among this group to adopt a map and propose a map to the county legislature that we can all get behind. So with that, I would urge my fellow commissioners to support this resolution. I understand that there are some concerns over the legwork, over the ability to actually secure locations in all of these places. We are very willing to collaborate, to move locations, to move times, to accommodate any concerns that you have. We're also happy to do the legwork. We've spoken with staff and staff on our end, happy to do the legwork, to find locations, and at our next meeting we can come back and present specific dates, specific times. As you know, our resolution lays out a framework, basically an instruction to staff to go out and find places that will work. So with that, I would move for adoption of resolution number 1.
May I ask you to continue your explanation of the other as well, and we can vote on them in one block?
I think we want to have a roll call vote on each resolution. So I would move at this point for a roll call vote on resolution number 1. If that's...
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have spoken to my fellow appointees from the Republican majority side, and there seems to be a consensus on our side of the table that there was an implicit authority on the part of the chairperson of the commission to convene the commission, and that is what you have done, and you have put forth a schedule of dates that, unless overturned by 6 votes, would stand. And it is our view that at the present time, in the absence of any further articulation of dates and locations that meet all of the requirements at this point in time, I believe that I'm going to vote no on the resolution that's been proposed, and I encourage my fellow Republican appointees to vote similarly.
Mr. Chairman, I assume that this is now open for discussion given Mr. Peter B's comments. In addition to the hearings that my colleague, Mr. Pernick, has mentioned with respect to scheduling a fulsome opportunity for the public to participate in many more meetings than my Republican counterparts have proposed, our resolution number 1 also provides for the transparency that we heard a lot about this evening, including posting notices on the county's website, including requiring that all of the meetings have a sign language and language interpreters available, and several other critical components to make sure that these public meetings are done properly and transparently. So I intend to vote for this resolution.
And just to be clear, I think there was a representation that there was certain information on the county website regarding the temporary districting advisory committee. The county website currently has posted on an agenda. However, it's from 2013, so that was 9 years ago. And I do take issue with my esteemed colleague, Mr. B. The charter does not provide the chairman of the commission with the authority to make hearing dates and rule by fiat. In fact, the charter is very clear that the chairman is a non-voting member and does not have that authority. So absent the explicit authority of the chairman in the charter to set forth hearing dates, and especially as a non-voting member, any suggestion that that is the law is completely wrong. The charter is very clear that any action taken by this commission requires 6 votes. So.
Okay. You want me to call the vote? You want to by name?
Yes, please. A roll call vote.
Okay. David Mejias.
Yes.
Jared Cashow.
Aye, yes.
Andrena Wyatt.
Yes.
James Morgan, Jr.
Megan, yes.
Michael Pernick.
Yes.
Peter B.
No.
John Reinhardt.
No.
Maureen Fitzgerald.
No.
Christopher Devane.
No.
Pastor Eric Millett.
No.
It's a tie. I believe it goes to the runner.
Actually, there's no 6th person, is there? You have any more other resolutions?
We do have other resolutions, so the chairman does not vote. Yes.
So at this point, I'd like to turn to resolution number 2, which focuses on transparency. It basically adopts all of the best practices from redistricting commissions across the country to ensure that we have a transparent process. It's a statement of this body that we intend to be open, we intend to be forthright, and do everything we can so that the public can participate fully in the process. It also clarifies that we are subject to the open meetings law, which I believe we are, so it confirms that that is something that we all agree to. It clarifies that every single meeting must be live streamed, every single meeting must be posted online, and it also sets out specific information that should be posted on the county redistricting website. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge some of this information. So first, a summary of the applicable laws that apply to this body, so members of the public can learn about what legal requirements apply to this body. A schedule for all of the meetings, all the hearings conducted by the commission, with notice at least 7 days in advance. We heard from many members of the public who were very concerned that there was not sufficient notice of this meeting, so we are calling for posting at least 7 days in advance of every single meeting that this commission will be having. Agendas posted at least 24 hours in advance online. Video recordings and transcripts of all of the past hearings, of all of the meetings that have taken place. Any documents, draft maps, resolutions, analyses, anything else that's going to be considered by this commission, we should make it our practice to post online so that members of the public have that same information as well. We also should be posting information on the current map, and not just an image of the map that's already on the website, but all of the data, the shape files, the block equivalency files, all of the technical data that will allow any member of the public to give us feedback on the current districts. That's really important to make public and to be transparent. A lot of redistricting websites, and people talked about this, have the capacity for people to submit comments through the website, an online portal, so members of the public can engage in the process. Our resolution calls for that capability as well. Biographies of the commissioners. People should know who we are, know what we bring to the table, and we should be transparent about this body, who we are, and our qualifications for this work. And finally, many commissions have mechanisms to allow members of the public to put their email address into a list so they could receive regular updates about the Commission's work. We should start that immediately so we can keep members of the public who are especially interested informed as we move forward. This is not a controversial resolution in my view, but if there are things that are impractical that might be challenging to deal with, we're very happy to accept amendments. We're very happy to adjust this so it's acceptable and we can reach a compromise that works for everyone. With that, I would move for adoption of resolution number 2 and ask for a roll call vote.
We have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that much of what has been asked for is already in practice and in play. I think it's the intention of the Republican appointees to honor and meet all state and federal law requirements regarding this reapportionment process, and this resolution is essentially either already embodied in the law or is otherwise unnecessary to be embodied in a new resolution. So again, I think I will vote no, and I encourage my fellow commissioners to vote no.
Just to clarify the record, when I went on the website, most of the items listed in our resolution were not available on our website. So, current maps, shapefiles, data of the current maps, summary and text of all applicable laws setting the legal standards. The schedule of meetings, when I checked, was not available, and certainly was not posted with the 7 days notice that we're requiring. Video recordings, transcripts, there is no capacity for members of the public to add their name to an email list to receive updates about this process. In fact, almost everything in this resolution isn't currently on the website, so this is a statement of our goal, of our commitment to transparency, and if this is something that it sounds like you share that goal, there's no reason not to support this resolution so that we're all on the same page and we make it clear to the public that we are committed to transparency.
David Mejias?
I vote yes.
Jared Cashow?
Forgive me, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to be heard with respect to the current motion. And to the rest of my commissioners on the board, I think one thing that we heard consistently this evening from essentially all of the speakers is the fundamental lack of trust in the process, right? So given the fundamental lack of trust, I think there is absolutely zero reason not to vote for this resolution, given, Mr. P., your comments that this is something that you intend to abide by. I think a vote against this resolution is a vote against transparency and will not serve to bolster our constituents' confidence in this process.
Jared Cashow, how do you vote?
Aye, yes.
Adriana Wyatt?
Yes.
James Megan?
Still Megan, yes.
Still is, huh? Michael Pernick?
Yes.
Peter B?
No.
John Reinhardt?
No.
Maureen Fitzgerald?
No.
Christopher Devane?
No.
Pastor Eric Millett?
No.
Can we have some order in here, please? You have next resolution, number 3.
You're going to do the same thing. Why are we here if you're going to do the same thing? You can replay your script from 10 years ago.
Will somebody, will see,
You're not listening to bullshit. Don't care.
can we have somebody deal with resolution number 3?
So I understand. I understand that there has been an agreement that each caucus has full discretion to retain experts, full discretion to retain staff and consultants. Mr. Chairman, you made that clear in your opening comments. That being said, this resolution seeks to set out and formalize the procedures for our interaction and dealing with consultants, with experts, and staff, and most critically, requires disclosure of who we are retaining, the names of the people, the names of the law firms, the names of the experts, the contracting information, so that members of the public know who it is that we have engaged in this process to advise us, who we have engaged to develop maps. And it's also important to know this resolution doesn't just call for disclosure of the names, but also subcontractors. So if one of our delegations goes out and retains a law firm, and that law firm subcontracts with somebody else to draw the maps, that we tell the public who that person is, because the public has a right to know who is drafting maps for our county legislature. So this resolution formalizes the agreement that we already reached for both sides to have discretion to retain experts and consultants, but it also sets out a process, makes clear that we all have an opportunity to question and interact with any expert, any consultant retained to advise us. So there's transparency, openness in that process. With that, I will move for adoption of resolution number 3 and request a roll call vote.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Mr.
Dave?
Chairman, I must again find myself in disagreement with the Democratic appointees. The Republican appointees do intend to comply with the law and will follow the process that has been set forth. But I see no purpose to this resolution, and I respectfully must agree to disagree with my honorable Democratic colleagues.
David Mejias?
Yes.
Jared Cashow?
Yes.
Andriana Wyatt?
Wyatt, yes.
I'm having trouble tonight, I'm sorry. James Megan, Jr.
Yes.
Michael Pernick?
Yes.
Peter B.
No.
John Reinhardt?
No.
Maureen Fitzgerald?
No.
Christopher Dane, Christopher Dane, sorry, Chris. Christopher Devane?
No.
Eric Millett?
No.
Okay. Will someone explain the fourth? What? Yes, fourth resolution.
So resolution 4 calls for collaboration and cooperation among this group in the simple act of setting agendas. We were not consulted on the agenda for today. We first learned of the agenda for this meeting when it was purportedly decided and distributed, but we didn't have an opportunity to weigh in on that agenda. We, as Mr. Mejia said at the outset, we did present a second agenda and circulated that for consideration. I don't know whatever happened with that agenda that we prepared, but that was intended to be the start of a collaborative discussion about how this process should be run. Moving forward, we think it's in the county's best interest for us to all have an opportunity to weigh in on the agenda and to formalize the fact that we all have an opportunity to weigh in on the agenda. So this resolution, it's very short, non-controversial. It sets out a simple process wherein the Democratic members and the Republican members each appoint a co-chair, an individual who's designated to be consulted on the agenda, add agenda items for consideration. It also, again, calls for all agendas to be finalized, posted online at least 24 hours prior to each meeting. and calls for a new business item in each agenda that we have moving forward. Again, nothing controversial here, just trying to formalize some bipartisan cooperation. And with that, I will move for adoption of resolution number 4.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm again speaking against the resolution for the simple reason that our agenda is already set by law, and that agenda is that we start a meeting by pledging our allegiance to the flag, and that we then listen to the public in a public hearing. And eventually, after we've heard from the public, we draft maps that we would be prepared to recommend to the legislative body. To the extent that each side thinks that some particular procedural aspect needs to be addressed, I'm sure that that can be done without the necessity for a resolution. So I propose to vote no on this resolution.
Is there a second? Did I ask for that already? Okay, I'm sorry. David Mejias.
Yes, I'm going to vote yes, but I just want to be very clear that all of the resolutions that my colleague Mr. Pernick has put before a vote here today were delivered in advance to the chairman, and to the extent that there was even an agenda item by the chairman to consider the Democratic resolutions that we're considering here today. These are not resolutions that were just submitted today for the first time. They were submitted in advance in July, I believe, was the first time we sent them out. So now we're at the end of August, so there was plenty of time to either talk about these items, come to some sort of consensus, some middle ground. If there was an issue with something, we were more than flexible and try to we would certainly amend our resolutions if there was a particular concern. However, there was absolutely zero outreach to us to try and build consensus regarding these resolutions. So as to this resolution on the floor now, I also vote yes.
Jared Cashow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to point out something that one of the public speakers this evening, Mr. Boytel, had referenced, and that's the expectation that the public has an opportunity to hear debate and discussion on the importance of all things redistricting among the commissioners of this meeting. So to suggest that our sole purpose here is to listen to the public and then just create a map, I think minimalizes the importance of this committee. I vote yes on the resolution.
Adriana Wyatt.
Yes.
James Megan.
Yes.
Michael Pernick.
Yes.
Peter B.
No.
John Reinhardt.
No.
Maureen Fitzgerald.
No.
Christopher Devane.
No.
Passed Eric Millett.
No.
Okay, that fails now. Do you have one more? We have, without disrespect, I know you have a large opinion. That's not a problem. So can we please have somebody read the what's in that?
So at this point, I'd like to turn to resolution number 5. As we have discussed today, there have been a lot of changes in the law in the last 10 years. A lot of changes. In particular, this resolution speaks to certain changes in the municipal home rule law. And I'd like to read a line from the municipal home rule law that was not present when this commission convened in the last redistricting cycle. I quote, "Districts shall not be drawn to discourage competition or for the purpose of favoring or disfavoring incumbents or other particular candidates or political parties." End quote. This language is an express prohibition on partisan gerrymandering, plain and simple. And this language was litigated in the Harkenrider case, which has been referenced earlier today, in which the New York Court of Appeals set out a standard for evaluating whether a map is an unlawful partisan gerrymander. We need to be very aware of this, very cognizant of this, and take steps as a body to ensure that the county doesn't get sued for adopting an illegal map. There's a significant risk of that if we don't take affirmative steps to protect the county from unnecessary litigation. It's also common sense that as a bipartisan body trying to do the right thing for the county, trying to earn 6 votes, that we really shouldn't be thinking about partisan advantage. We should be thinking about fair districts. We should be thinking about communities of interest. We should be thinking about communities of color that may not be fairly represented today, and we should be focused on the substance of the testimony that we receive. So what this resolution does is it prohibits us from considering partisan data when drawing maps. For example, we should not be looking at election results. Plain and simple. That should not be a consideration that we take into account. We should not be considering enrollment data, Democratic or Republican enrollment data. That's not a consideration that's relevant to our work. We should be focused solely on the merits, solely on what's important for communities in our county. So this resolution sets a guardrail, sets a guideline that we will all agree to adhere to, that we are not going to consider partisanship, that we're not going to consider party advantage when we draw our maps. This is not an unusual guideline. This is not an unusual rule. There are states across the country that have similar prohibitions in their commissions, their redistricting processes, that say you shouldn't consider partisan data. We've put those in the resolution. Iowa, Montana, Arizona, California all have limitations and prohibitions on the consideration of partisan data. So this resolution is designed, first and foremost, to ensure that the maps that emerge from this process are lawful, ensure that the maps comply with the new requirements under the Municipal Home Rule Law, but it's also a mechanism for disciplining ourselves, making sure that we're focused on the issues that matter and not on political partisan advantage in this process. So with that, I would move for adoption of resolution number 5.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak to the motion? Once again, I find this more political grandstanding than substance. The law dictates what criteria we must use. I can assure you that all of the Republican appointees intend to follow the law to the best of their ability and the way they understand the law to be. So that is already in the law. That's our charge. That's what we're prepared to do. But I see no reason for this resolution. I intend to vote no.
Mr. B, would you commit on the record to not consider partisan data in the drawing of maps?
That's out of order. Let's deal with the vote that's on the table.
I'd like to comment, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You can.
Another common theme given this evening during the thoughtful testimony that we heard from our constituents was the frustration in everything devolving into the red versus blue. And again, I think in order to resolve that issue for the benefit of our constituents, and the fact that this resolution serves to protect the county's interests and protects the county against lawsuits, I strongly recommend that commissioners vote in favor of this.
Sorry, David Mejias.
Yes, this was another one of the resolutions that was submitted in July for distribution to all commission members, and it's been, the opportunity for debate was long before this evening. Again, we're more than willing to compromise and amend part of this resolution also to gain bipartisan support. Having said that, I vote yes.
Jared Cashow.
I vote yes.
Andriana Wyatt.
Yes.
James Megan.
Yes.
Michael Pernick.
I'll also add for the record that nothing in Mr. B's comments committed to refrain from considering election results, partisan data, nothing. And that's deeply concerning. With that, I'll vote yes.
Peter B.
No.
John Reinhardt.
No.
Maureen Fitzgerald.
No.
Christopher Devane.
No.
Pastor Eric Millett.
No.
Okay, now before we adjourn, I just have only one thing to say. With respect as a generic proposition, the resolutions that just failed either contained information that was outside the current requirements of law or already in effect and within it. I would say that, and I don't concede that it was received by me in July, but whatever the record shows is, but all of those were shared with the members of the Republican delegation as well, and with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Just one more order of business.
Oh yes, I'm sorry.
So
sorry.
Having that's it for the resolutions. However, the public does know that both sides do have equal budgets and do retain, experts, consultants, et cetera. So I'd like to make a motion for a voice vote that the commission authorize the respective Democratic and Republican commission delegations to each retain staff, experts, and consultants of their choice within the limits of their budgetary allocations, and to ratify such hires as have already been made.
Mr. Mejias, if I may suggest, I don't think a resolution is necessary to do that, but we acknowledge that that is the case.
Yeah, I just think it would be just the belts and suspenders. I think it would be, so that we both have staff and consultants, and that as long as we're within our budgetary allocation, that each side has.
That is also my understanding of the budget process. Yes, but I do not think that resolution is necessary or appropriate. That is, in fact, the way the budgets have been allocated and the operations under which we have been given to operate.
So I'm not asking for a resolution, just unanimous consent that you can hire your staff and experts, we can hire our staff and experts as long as it's within the budgetary allocation.
That is our understanding, yes.
Okay, so we all agree. Both sides?
Again, that is our understanding of the budget process.
Okay, I'm just saying we have an agreement here because I just want to I don't want to have a problem down the road.
I hate that word, agree.
What's that? I know. I'm just trying to get you guys to agree to something today.
We appear to agree on
anything other than the motion to adjourn. I want to agree on one thing.
We appear to agree on our mutual understanding of the budget allocation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. With that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
A bipartisan adjournment.
Thank you.